thank you. I am going to read through the report. It is in your papers. It's in the Standing Orders Committee report at the back. But I am going to read through it. I'd planned to do that already, but because of the discussions that took place this morning, I think it's really important for people to understand where Disputes Committee is coming from, and it's easy to skimp through if you're reading it yourself. So please bear with me on that. I'm going to read through most of it. The Disputes Committee ran as a transitional committee. I will skip some of the first bit. We ran as a transitional committee during the last year, and we became this elected committee in May. So we're led by the Constitution, and we were asked to bring draft standing orders to the conference, to this conference for consideration, and Joseph will talk about that when I've finished. Thank you. We've been kept busy in the year, as you've heard, working on disputes arising in Glasgow, Manchester, Stockport, Norwich, Nottingham, and between an individual and the National Secretary. There have been discussions in various places about confidentiality versus openness. And we work on the principle of recognising that people have a right to privacy and a right to be protected. And so we will promote our responsibility to the vulnerable in making decisions about disclosure, mindful of Article 8 of the Human Rights Act. We were presented with a situation in August 2014 in which we felt we needed the person under complaint to be stopped from his activities immediately while we considered the issues raised, because that person had a lot of power in the branch, which, it was reported, he was abusing in such a way that some members were fearful. And there was also a risk that he was acting in the name of, but not with the agreement of, the branch. At that point, we knew that in exceptional circumstances it could be very destructive if the behaviour that had been reported were allowed to continue. And we needed some way to prevent it happening while we looked at investigating the complaint. We know that the decision to include in our standing orders the power to suspend someone while we look at a complaint has been unpopular with some and supported by others. We do not see how we can properly do our job unless somewhere in the party such a decision can be made quickly in exceptional circumstances and without the authority to suspend as a temporary measure to protect members for 28 days, renewable if or when necessary. The current active members of the Dispute Committee will resign. That's because we don't feel we can do our job. We've used this power 3 times today. In 2 cases, our objective was to limit the person's ability to destructively manipulate from a position of power within the party. And in the 3rd case, it was in response to what seemed to be unapologetic and continuing disregard for the party's commitment to ensuring that people feel respected and safe. While each dispute has its individual characteristics, there are common themes. There's a tendency for people to suggest a split in the branch as a solution to the dispute. In the interest of working in unity, we do not accept that this is a viable alternative because it leads to a proliferation of small groups of friends or like-minded people working in isolation from each other in their area, but under the Left Unity banner. We're acutely aware that political difference gives rise to some of the behaviours brought to our attention. Enthusiastic activists have sometimes lost sight of the need for creating a solid basis for actions within the branch and steam ahead with their plans, but without confirmation that the branch supports what they're doing. Their level of activism and commitment to change is admired, and the generosity of time and sometimes finances is much appreciated, but they're not actually creating a solid foundation for the party. We need solid branches, not one man, and they have to date been men so far, not one-man bands. Frustration with others who don't agree is not a reason to shout at others in the branch, to undermine their confidence, to manipulate, to isolate, and to put members in fear of attending meetings or being involved in other ways in the life of the party. The old ways of rubbishing those who you don't agree with, hounding opponents with theoretical and intellectual argument, or backing people into the corner do not work for us if we're going to build a society based on mutual respect, diversity, tolerance of difference, and listening to the other. We need to really take on board the idea of doing politics differently. Outright manipulation to achieve the end goal is not acceptable. We've seen and heard about highly destructive, demeaning, ridiculing and abusive, personally undermining use of social media and in emails in group meetings, some of it in the public domain. Why are people using their time for this when UKIP's winning seats in Parliament? We have better things to do with our time. Tolerance is another theme. We are a new party, having survived our first year and coming from disparate backgrounds and experiences. We've already touched on tolerance of political difference, but if everyone who shouted at a branch meeting or who made an unkind comment were to be suspended, please read the rest in your notes. Thank you.
Can I see there's somebody supposed to be moving the standing orders and procedures? Who is that? Oh, Joseph. Okay. Thanks, Joseph. You've got 3 minutes, Joseph. There's a reference back. Oh, yes. Shall we take the reference? We should do the reference back first.
MacNair, Oxford and Communist Platform. I want to move reference back of that report. Basically, the point of having a disputes committee, as opposed to simply having powers to deal with these things in National Council or whatever, is to take certain sorts of disputes out of the political process and have them resolved in a quasi-judicial way. So I'm speaking here more as a guy who's an academic lawyer as much as I am as a Communist Platform supporter. I think that the report which has been presented does not show the disputes committee acting as a forum for the resolution of disputes in a quasi-judicial way. In fact, I think it's fairly clear that it involves the disputes committee violating the rules of natural justice by which this organisation is bound as a matter of English law. And therefore, I would propose that we should refer back the Disputes Committee's report of what it has done in the last year in order to get it to reconsider and act as it should be acting as a quasi-judicial body.
Comrades, there's no discussion on reference back, so we move straight to the vote. Everyone clear? So can I see all those who are in favour of reference back? Don't count yet, Terry. Hold on. Okay. Hands down, comrades. Can I see all those against? I would say that's fairly clearly defeated. Yep. In which case could... Oh, sorry. All right, yeah. In which case, could I ask Joseph then to move the report?
Okay, Joseph Healy, co-convener, Disputes Committee. I think it was Pete Green who said yesterday that our constitution leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, that's an understatement. And to some extent, some of the things that have happened have been as a result of that, because I'm referring now to the suspension powers, because in that situation, where we have found ourselves, with critical situations happening in branches, we have actually had to step in and do something, because the alternative was to wait 2 months for a meeting of the National Council. Now, this is a time-specific measure, and it is always ratified or not by the National Council. So it isn't just a case of us having this power without any overview. This is a proposal, but we need to have this, and we've made this quite clear in the report, because if we don't, we have situations, from bullying, harassment, or whatever, we can have actually branches disintegrating, members leaving, and all the rest. So, we're not excusing this. We're saying that we need to have this power, and we feel that we can't function without it. But as I pointed out, it is reviewed. We've also looked here in the in Section A at the issues about confidentiality. It's vitally important. And I realise, the need for transparency and so on. But when we're dealing with situations where we have very vulnerable people coming to us, a lot of very, very personal evidence and so on, there's no way that we can include that in accounts of what we're doing. We have taken on board some of the amendments from, is it Phil Pope? Phil Pope. We have taken on board some of those amendments, like, for example, with the issues going to the National Council. We're fully aware of that and we agree with that. And, as I've said, the National Council can throw out anything that we recommend if they want to. But the confidentiality issue is vitally important, but in terms of, I mean, one of our members is a solicitor, and he's told us that we have no indemnity. We cannot get indemnity. So we would be, each one of us, liable if there was a libel action taken against us. The party would not be able to protect us against that. Those are the sort of issues that we have to face, plus the sort of issues we discussed this morning about protecting people in vulnerable groups and so on. It's very important that we have a right of confidentiality. We're more than happy to do a series of, bullet points on the main decisions reached and so on, and those can go to the National Council. And indeed, the recent suspensions, some of the recent suspensions, reports on that will go to the National Council, and the National Council can discuss that. But we're asking you, it's not an easy job. If you want to find out what we're doing, read the Weekly Worker. I was thinking of actually writing a monthly column called Disputes Corner, but that's up to them and whether they want to hang on. But anyway, try and back us and give us at least the benefit of the doubt. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Joseph. Can I see the mover of Amendment A1 from Sheffield?
I'm looking forward to that column. Tina Becker, Sheffield, Chair Sheffield Left Unity. Well, what we're suggesting to do here is delete one paragraph, which is a paragraph on confidentiality, which is on page 67. It's the paragraph before the last one, that all business discussed should be confidential. I think there's a real problem with that. We've spoken about it this morning in terms of the need for transparency, openness, etc. Not just a hierarchical structure, but also, vertical democracy and knowing what's going on in the organization. Doesn't mean we have to have everybody's name, etc. I think there's a lot of stuff going on, people, being reported, etc., without clear evidence, etc. So we don't want to publish all the details of things like that. This could ruin somebody's reputation. But I think what we need is a very much different culture where if there is an issue that the accused